It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Rico Brogna time. Welcome to a brand spanking new edition of Rico Brogna, episode number 445. This is a late Friday night, Rico, if you're consuming it live. If you're consuming it over the weekend, happy weekend to you. We only have, think about it this way, after this weekend, one more weekend without Major League Baseball. Isn't that crazy to really think about? But also keep in mind that the first Sunday of the baseball season, we don't have a Met game. So that will be strange, but at least there'll be other baseball games, and we will have been coming off of 3 games against the Houston Astros. And speaking of those 3 games against the Houston Astros, on Friday afternoon, before the Mets played their spring training game against the St. Louis Cardinals, early in the afternoon on Friday, Carlos Mendoza, out of absolutely nowhere, decided to inform us on who the Mets opening day starting pitcher will be. And if you gave it a lot of thought, if you thought about, okay, who's kind of ahead of everybody else in terms of innings pitched, in terms of being out there on the mound, and then you think about effectiveness, and then you realize that Mendy doesn't have any loyalty to starting someone in particular. This isn't 7 years ago with Jacob deGrom. This isn't 30 years ago with Doc Gooden. This isn't 45 years ago with Tom Seaver. Like, there's clearly no obvious opening day starting pitcher, someone who deserves to get that nod. I think most of us leaned towards Sean Manaea prior to him getting hurt. But when you take away the idea that Mendy owed this honor to anybody in particular, and you just thought about the way each person is pitched in spring training, and you strip everything else away, it starts to become obvious that the choice is Clay Holmes. Now, that sounds weird to say because I don't think going into this offseason, any of us expected Clay Holmes to be on the Mets as a starting pitcher. So now to take that jump and say he's going to get the honor, that same honor that Jacob deGrom got a bunch of times, that same honor that Al Leiter got a bunch of times, the same honor that Tom Seaver and Doc Gooden got a host of times. It is weird if you go back just a few months, but if you've watched spring training over the last 3.5 weeks, he's the guy who's earned it. And Carlos Mendoza said as much when he was discussing the idea of Clay Holmes starting on opening day. He's had a very good spring training. Remember, he was the guy that made the very first spring training start, and he pitched well. So he's been ahead of everybody. And we'll get to Kodai Senga and some of the other guys in the rotation in a few minutes. But when you look at effectiveness, when you look at how many innings each guys have thrown, Clay Holmes is ahead of the pace. So it's not surprising when you really think about it. And congratulations to Clay Holmes, because there is a symbolic honor to starting opening day. I think it's overrated in terms of what it actually means. But for him, for a guy that's converting from a relief pitcher to a starting pitcher, I could see the honor of it. Opening day of a Major League Baseball season. Now, the reason I say it's overrated is I think over the last couple of years, if you're a Met fan, you almost forgot who has started opening day. It's become like a fog. Like, do you remember that Jose Quintana started opening day for the team last year? Do you remember that Max Scherzer did it 2 years ago? And then the year before that, when Max was hurt and Jake was hurt, it was actually Tyler McGill who started on opening day. So I get the honor of it. If you have a legitimate ace, if you have a Tom Seaver, if you have a Doc Gooden, there's an honor to starting opening day. But I think when you look at the way the Met rotation has been built over the last couple of years, where there is no obvious ace, maybe that will change someday with a guy that they develop, like a Brandon Sproat or some other way. But as long as it's a cavalcade of arms, I kind of look at it and say, all right, who's just most ready to start the season? Simple as that. And Clay Holmes is most ready to start this season. But it is not lost on me, and it shouldn't be lost on you, that the idea of Clay Holmes starting opening day would have sounded like the craziest piece of fiction if someone tried to tell you this 4 months ago. And I always usually hate that phrase. If I would have told you 5 months ago, if I would have told you 6 months ago, if I would have even told you 3 months ago that on opening day in Houston, that ball is going to be handed to Clay Holmes, it would have sounded nuts. But right now, the Mets are on this little bit of a run in their history where each year is a different opening day starter. You go back to 2021, Jacob deGrom had started his third consecutive opening day. He did it in 19, he did it in 20, he did it in 21. And then the injuries started to pick up. So we had Tyler McGill in 22, Max Scherzer in 23, Jose Quintana in 24, and now Clay Holmes in 25. So it's actually 5 different starting pitchers who have started opening day. But you go through Met history. Syndergaard did it a couple of years in a row. Matt Harvey did it in 2016. Bartolo Colon did it in the year in which we won the pennant back in 2015. And that whole debate around Bartolo Colon starting, I don't know if anybody remembers the discussion, but it was actually a big topic point on WFAN where everybody had an opinion on who should start opening day. And I think the reason it became such a kind of a debate was because Matt Harvey was coming off of Tommy John surgery. And Matt Harvey was everybody's favorite Met. Everybody loved Matt Harvey. So the controversy that we all debated on WFAN was, should Matt Harvey start opening day? And they ultimately decided Bartolo Colon as the veteran, as the guy who had been around, as the guy who had an innings-eating year the year before. And I was the lone voice screaming and yelling, saying, wait a second, it shouldn't be Matt Harvey. It shouldn't be Bartolo Colon. It should be the reigning Rookie of the Year award winner, who was Jacob deGrom. And that was actually the origin of deGrom becoming my favorite player, because I felt like during that whole discussion where Craig would scream in the mornings, it's got to be Matt Harvey, and Joe would scream on middays with me, it's got to be Matt Harvey, and Frances in the afternoons would say, it's got to be Matt Harvey. I was the lone voice saying, wait a second, why isn't it deGrom? The guy just won Rookie of the Year. That's where I felt the disrespect started for Jacob deGrom. But before that, Dylan G started an opening day. Jonathan Neese started an opening day. Mike Pelfrey started an opening day. Johan Santana started 4 of 5 opening days. Tommy Glavine started 4 of 5 opening days. Pedro Martinez started only 1 opening day for us. And this was a memorable one. I wrote about this in my book, My Mets Bible, because he was utterly brilliant. He struck a ton of guys out, but he gave up a couple of home runs, and the Mets had a lead in the 9th inning, and Braden Looper blew it against Cincinnati. Al Leiter started 3 out of 4 opening days. The one he didn't start was when Mike Hampton got the nod, the one year he was here back in 2000. Bobby Jones started back-to-back opening days, and obviously Doc Gooden had a lot. He had 2 in a row, missed 87 for obvious reasons. Then he had 4 in a row, missed the beginning of the 92 season, and then he came back and started 93 and 94. The 94 one was the Tuffy Rhodes game. For anybody that remembers that, a game at Wrigley Field. That was one of the earlier opening days that I actually remember. So we root for a franchise that has had a very good history of these aces starting on opening day. From Tom Seaver way back when, where he basically started every opening day between 1968 and 1977. Every single one of them, which is funny to think about now, because even if we were lucky enough, like we were with deGrom, to have an ace, to have that unquestioned opening day starting pitcher, injuries would derail it at some point. It did with deGrom. It's doing it now with Cole and the New York Yankees, and other things besides injuries obviously derailed Doc. But Tom Seaver never got derailed. He started opening day every year. So until we have a legitimate ace, which this franchise does not have, and hopefully it will develop, opening day is going to be a who's most ready coming out of spring training kind of nod. And that's what it is for Clay Holmes. But congratulations to Clay. Now, the guy that most of us wanted to see start on opening day before he got hurt was Sean Manaea. Sean Manaea obviously burst onto the scene in his first year with the Mets last year, had a tremendous season, got even better in the second half of the year, and then became the most reliable postseason starter, obviously, until the end when it felt like he ran out of gas. That seems to be kind of the excuse we're all making for him, which is probably true. I don't, say excuse in some kind of negative way, but that's what we all just kind of repeat. Well, yeah, he was out of gas. Well, the good news is maybe he'll be better equipped to not run out of gas, because obviously he's starting the season on the injured list. But very quietly, Sean Manaea came through his MRI clean, and has started to throw. It was actually one of the better moments Hoff and I had down in spring training. We were meeting with Carlos Mendoza in the dugout right after he told us all about Francisco Alvarez. And Hoff, I don't know if you remember this, but I think one of the first questions we asked him, maybe right after talking about Alvarez, was,
Yeah.
how you doing? And his response was, yeah, none of those reporters asked about Sean Manaea. Good question.
Yeah, I honestly, I just was in a fog, so I might have missed exactly the Sean Manaea stuff. But yeah, that was the first thing. That was the most pressing thing on my mind, at least.
Yeah, and I was glad that he gave us the compliment of saying, hey, no one else asked that question. And he told us what was obvious, which is, yeah, in a couple of days, assuming the MRI is clean, because he told us Manaea was feeling better, which we talked about on the Rico a few days ago, but still, they needed that clean MRI. He would begin throwing, and he has begun throwing. So now, and we're never going to get a straight answer from Mendy or the Mets on this as far as how long this should take. But if he's throwing now on March 14th, at least we record this on March 14th, I think he started throwing about 2 days ago on March 12th. That's the beginning of spring training. So that's where the process begins. And depending on how quickly the Mets want to go with this, I think we're looking at probably the last few weeks of April where Manaea makes his return, barring a setback. And when you do the math on that, this turned out to not be that bad. They really avoided the worst on this because now you're looking at just missing a handful of starts to start the year.
Yeah, and I mean, we're pretty much used to that going into every single season, whether it's Kodai Senga or whomever it's going to be. It feels like there's always a starter that is missing time in the beginning of the season. So that's not new for us.
And it's, I mapped out the schedule, and obviously rainouts could change everything, and how Mendy's going to handle this and lay out the rotation may not be exactly the way I try to write it down. But the way I figured it is the Mets, if they want to go with a 6-man rotation, because they want to avoid Senga pitching on regular rest, and that's basically what they've implied to us and told us, they could go as far as April 19th without a 6th man. That's as far as they can go if they want to get creative in the rotation where guys not named Kodai Senga are pitching with regular rest, but most guys are pitching with either pitching on a 6th day or on a 7th day. So they're getting 5 days or 6 days rest. If they really want to be creative about this, they can go all the way to April 19th. April 19th is not a crazy Manaea return date, assuming there's no setback.
That's 3 weeks.
I think part of it's going to be how far they want Manaea to go once he returns. Like they could very well say he's on a 70 pitch count and we'll piggyback him with a Griffin Canning or someone else. As long as they're willing to do that, I think April 19th is a reasonable return date. And that's the first day that they would absolutely need to add a 6th starting pitcher.
That's 3 weeks. That's nothing. That's like that's nothing, not even a first month of the season. So that's perfect, actually. I mean, to be honest with you, sometimes you're talking about like Brandon Nimmo, we'll get to him in a second, but we talk about like how sometimes you want people to just kind of get ready later in the season and stuff like that. Like it's perfect. You're easing them in, you're not rushing them back, and it's none of the season has been wasted, at least. So
yeah, and if we believe that the reason he struggled at the end of last season in the postseason was because he was tired, well, guess what? You're cutting out a couple of starts this season and you're giving him, I don't want to say time to rest, but he has had time to rest because he hasn't thrown in a month. So it works out perfectly in terms of making sure Manaea is rested for the start of this season. So they go with Clay Holmes on opening day. They have not announced who pitches game 2, who pitches game 3, who pitches game 4, who pitches game 5. I watched a little bit of Kodai Senga on Friday night. He did not throw a lot of his ghost forkballs in this game. He did whip out a brand new pitch called a miracle ball. And quite frankly, I don't know why he calls it that. Maybe it's a miracle that people don't hit the shit out of it because it's like a 62 mile per hour lob, basically. And he threw it and he got the batter, I think it was the catcher who ended up hitting the home run off of him, to just foul the ball off. So I guess if you whip out that pitch once a game, the way David Cohn whipped out the Ephus pitch or the Laredo back in the day, I guess teams won't and players won't beat the crap out of it. But I doubt the miracle ball is going to be in his arsenal a lot. He did throw a lot of ghost forks in this game. And when he did, he started to use it later on in his performance when he got re-entered into the game. in the fourth inning, but he wasn't throwing the ghost fork for a strike. His fastball was being hit. And so Kodai was very hittable. Now, that doesn't concern me. I don't think the outcomes here in spring training matter all that much. Here's what matters. What matters is what Senga says after the game. Do you feel okay? How are you doing? Are you all right, Kodai? And Kodai Senga, through his translator, gives us a lot of talk as if his arm is a piece of glass where should be ready for opening day or the start of the season. I'm working on things. I'm making sure I'm okay. And I don't know if it's lost in translation. I don't know if it's just the way pitchers are treated in Japan. But when he speaks after games to his translator, he doesn't instill a lot of confidence in you. He just, and I don't mean confidence in terms of getting people out. I mean, confidence in terms of, is he going to pitch? Is he okay? Is he one of those guys where everything needs to be perfect for it to work? Now, Mendy said after the game on Friday night, hey, when Kodai Senga's healthy, he's an ace. And the reality is in 2023, when he pitched a full season, he did pitch like an ace. So I don't think that's a crazy comment. So my concern, even on a performance like Friday, where he was very hittable, because even the outs were allowed outs, he got hit pretty hard in this game. That's not my concern. My concern is he healthy? Is he going to be able to make those starts? And again, this is like the fifth time I brought this up because I think it bothers me in this weird way. When did they start this rule in spring training where you take a guy out and he comes back the next inning? The reentry rule. Because how many times have we seen that in spring training? Hoff and I saw it when we were at the game in Port St. Lucie a week ago. There was another game before that where we saw it, and we saw it on Friday, if you happen to watch Senga's performance, where he got taken out in the third inning and then came back for the fourth inning. It's very, very strange. I'm not complaining. I didn't score the game. I guess if I scored the game, I would have complained a little bit more about it. But his pitch counts still remain kind of in that 45 to 50 zone. So if Mendy wants, Senga can make 2 more starts in spring training. They could squeeze in 2 more starts. But if they do that, you're pushing Senga not day 2 against the Astros and not even day 3 against the Astros. You'd be pushing him into that Miami series, which is not really a big deal. Like, the start of a baseball season is not the start of a playoff series. You don't have to line up your starters as if this is the way you value a rotation. You know, the Yankees ended up not starting Max Fried on opening day because, they were falling into the trap of this is his day. His day, and the way it was scheduled before Cole got hurt, was to pitch the second day of the year. A big deal was made out of that last year with Marcus Stroman, where he's a creature of habit. There was a possibility he could start opening day, but he was off on days. The reality is, and I didn't think that was a big deal last year. I don't think it's a big deal this year with Fried not pitching opening day. And I bring this up only because if Senga starts the 5th game of the season, which would be the second game of that 3-game series against the Marlins, I don't think that's a big deal. I don't think there's a negative to that. Like, you want to extend as much time as he needs to get ready for this season and be as, I guess, 100% as he can be for his first start of the year. So if they start Senga on, let's say, that Tuesday night in Miami, you push him back just a little bit. It gives him 2 more starts to make in spring training. And then you've got an off day 2 days later, which again makes it easy for him to come back and pitch. I guess it would be the opener of the next Miami series. That's the other thing. You could have Senga facing the Marlins twice to start the season. So you can really give him that soft landing spot to begin the year. So if I had to guess right now, I think we're going to see Clay Holmes, obviously, game 1. That's been announced against the Astros. Mendy hasn't announced anything else, so that's why I say I'm speculating. David Peterson in game 2 against the Astros on that Friday night. And then maybe Paul Blackburn to pitch the finale of that series. That was the other encouraging thing. You're not looking for results. You don't freak out about results. But one thing I did ask Mendy when we spoke to him is, at what point does a bad performance or bad performances become concerning? And he didn't really give an answer. He didn't say when it would, because maybe it never would. But sometimes you see a bad performance like we saw with Cole and the Yankees, and it leads to something really bad, which is an injury. So Paul Blackburn is coming back from that weird injury he had last year. And his first few appearances, he wasn't very good. Okay, he's healthy. And Blackburn even said it after games. It's fine. I'm working my way back. In his last spring training start, he gave you 4 perfect innings. And that was certainly a step in the right direction where, again, you don't get really excited or nuts about results. But I think because he's coming off an injury and because he was struggling for a while, or at least in his first few spring training starts, it was nice to see Blackburn give you that really good performance. And he was able to do that a couple of days ago. Jose Budo is dealing with a groin issue, but apparently that doesn't seem that scary or severe because he threw a bullpen session on Friday. So Budo may be on his way back. The other injury that we've spent some time on is Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo has been very honest when talking to the media about, the knee injury and coming off the plantar fasciitis. The way things sound right now for Brandon is that he's going to be ready for opening day, but he may not be playing the outfield and he may be DHing. The negative to that, if there is one, because look, Jesse Winker can play left field. It's not really a big deal. The problem is Starling Marte. Starling Marte has come back this week. We talked about him on the last Rico. He's looked good at the plate. He's DHing. And so if Marte is only DHing, I would surmise that's his only role at the start of the baseball season. So the negative, if Nimmo is only able to DH for the first few games, is that probably makes Starling Marte a bench player. And remember, they're probably going to face a lefty on opening day in Framber Valdez. I'm not sure if they officially announced that or not, but logic certainly tells you that Framber, in his contract year and being the ace of the Astros, is going to pitch on opening day. If Nimmo is your DH and Marte is not ready to play the outfield, you're either looking at Jesse Winker against the lefty or both Siri and Tyrone Taylor in the lineup on opening day against the lefty like Valdez. So the only negative with Nimmo potentially not being ready to play the field is how it could hurt your flexibility and how it hurts potentially Marte getting into the lineup. But they clearly are going to take it easy with Brandon Nimmo. He said he's running at 80%. And you listen to him talk about his injuries. He sounds very in control of his body and understanding his body. And the other thing about injuries, and I'm not sure every Met fan feels this way, I may be in the minority, I really, more so than any other time as a Met fan, trust this administration, this training staff, and this manager to tell us the truth. So when Minaya went down with this oblique issue, yeah, I'm trying to remember all these injuries, the oblique issue, and they were honest and said, look, he's not throwing for this amount of time. If there are no symptoms, he'll throw again. I take him at face value. When they've downplayed the Nimmo stuff, I take him at face value. Look, he's back in the lineup playing. So I trust them when it comes to injuries. And what added to that trust was what Luis Severino happened to say the other day. Severino did an interview with AJ Przinsky and that show. I forget the name of it. I do remember that AJ Przinsky's on it. And Sevy talked about how
foul territory.
Foul territory. There you go. Eric Kratz, AJ Przinsky, whoever else is on that show. They do a fine job.
Scott Braun, I believe.
Ryan Braun. Not Ryan Braun? No, I'm just kidding. Scott Braun. And Sevy was putting over the Met training staff and talking about how, yeah, the Yankees have really good trainers, but boy, the Mets are on another level. And he talked specifically about the eating habits, the diet they put you on, and even how Sevy was able to change his sleeping habits. And it sounds so stupid, but it's so important. Think about all of us and how important sleep is. Hoff can speak on that better than anybody. So, that kind of stuff matters. And it does feel like for all the things that are so obviously different about the new era New York Mets, like having an owner that gives a crap about winning and spending a lot of money and having a team president that we trust, it does feel like, unlike the old days, where the joke always was, things are going to get worse when an injury is reported, even though injuries are going to happen. It's not like there's some miracle here where they're not going to deal with injuries. Look, Alvarez is out 6 to 8 weeks. It is what it is. Jeff McNeil's dealing with an oblique. It is what it is. Injuries are going to happen, but I feel better about, the recovery, and I also feel better about the honesty. Mendy's honest. That's the feeling I got. So when he says things about Brandon Nimmo, I'm not worried. Or he just tells you the hard truth about Francisco Alvarez or Jeff McNeil. It feels better because you know you're getting the honest truth. I do like that. Oh, one other thing from Friday's spring training game, a little preview of something that I'm looking forward to early in the season. Obviously, it sucks that Alvarez is hurt. It stinks that, him getting off to a great start and really becoming that offensive force that I think we've been dreaming of. It's short-circuited. And who knows when we'll see him back, and who knows how much this hand injury is going to affect his bat when he does come back. But one of the pluses is that Luis Torrens is an A-plus defender. And even though we saw him unable to block a wild pitch from Kodai Senga in this game, we saw him end the first inning with that cannon he's got behind the plate, throwing out a base runner. And Torrens can do that. And that's where Torrens was special last year. We went over his struggles offensively after his really good June and July on the last Rico Brogna. I'll summarize real quick. He didn't hit in August and September. That's the summary. He hit a lot in June and July when the Mets first acquired him. But after that, he didn't hit at all. But the one thing he did very consistently was he threw guys out. He had a great, great arm behind the plate. And that's one area where the Mets will benefit in the early going until Alvarez is back. Their defense will get significantly better. I've spent a lot of time on Brett Beatty and why he should make this team. And now with McNeil out, he should be the second baseman. But I get a lot of pushback, and we're going to do a mailbag on the Sunday, Rico Brogna. We'll get very, very interactive. And a lot of the mailbag is about Beatty and Acuna and a lot of varying opinions on that. Of course, you could always email us. That's not new, the ricob@gmail.com. But I do want to bring something up about Beatty and Acuna. I know that even a lot of people consuming the Rico right now, whether on YouTube or in the podcast, I know that spring training is boring. I understand it. I don't know how many people watch spring training. I don't know how many Met fans even pay attention to spring training. In fact, it's possible your only consumption of spring training is what we talk about here on the Rico Brogna, and I respect the hell out of that. But if you are somebody that is very pro Acuna over Beatty based on that 2-week sample size of last year, I do have to ask you a question. And be honest with me on this answer. While I don't want to get nuts about results in spring training because Francisco Lindor not hitting doesn't mean anything, just like Juan Soto tearing the cover off the ball doesn't mean anything. They're both great players, and what they do in March means dick, right? We could agree on that. But if you are competing for a job, okay, and the Mets don't have a lot of jobs that are up there, but they've got some roster spots. And if you're competing for a job in spring training, do you think performance matters? Because how else is David Stearns making a decision? Or any other team in this town? The Yankees have a third base competition, right? Do the results matter? Or do the results not matter? This is the one time where, yeah, results have to matter. If a guy's trying to make the team, they got to perform. If Donovan Walton is trying to make this team, or Luis De Los Santos is trying to make this team as a utility player, they can't hit 150, right? They got to perform. So I assume at least some of you, maybe most of you, will say, oh, yeah, I agree with that. You have to perform. Brett Beatty so far in spring training is 12 for 32 with 2 home runs. That's a .375 batting average. That's an OPS of 1,100. He has only struck out, I think this is one of the cooler parts too, he's only struck out 4 times in these 32 at-bats. So he's hit. Now, I get it. You may say, come on, Evan, he's hit before in spring training. He's hit AAA. That doesn't mean anything. Who gives a crap? Okay. You don't have to care. That doesn't mean he's going to hit once the season starts. But Luis Angel Acuna is 6 for 27, which is a .222 batting average and a .509 OPS. No home runs. He has struck out 5 times, has not walked 1 time. He's not had as good of an offensive spring training as Brett Beatty. Is it the biggest sample size in the world? No. Does it mean Acuna sucks? Not at all. But if this is a competition, if that's what we believe, it's a competition for a roster spot, and now it's a competition to be the opening day second baseman, or at least the most of the time second baseman until McNeil comes back. Tell me again, how it should be Acuna over Beatty. Because all you'd be basing it on is the 2 weeks from last year that, yes, he was great, but it was 2 weeks. So I ask you, Hoff, as certainly a representative of the other side, the Acuna should start over Beatty or even make the team over Beatty side. Do those results so far in spring training matter at all?
No, they don't. The same way that Paul Blackburn, if he has a bad day, it doesn't make a difference. Here's what it comes down to, and I'm going to be quite honest. I understand Brett Beatty's having a good spring training, but I've also seen him in the majors now for a couple of years, and he hasn't done anything to keep the job. Mark Vientos came up, took the job from Beatty. I know that he had an injury issue too a few years ago, so I mean, whatever. But the point is, we've seen him enough get the opportunity and not take it. I want to see somebody else get the opportunity and take it. And listen, if Acuna gets the starting job and doesn't win it, and then Beatty takes it from him, good. Have that competition. Don't just reward him because of a good spring training, because we've seen the good spring training and nothing happened since.
I agree. Brett Beatty's got to prove it at the next level. He's hit everywhere but the major league level on a consistent basis. I'm just merely saying spring training doesn't matter, but if you're going to have a competition, then it does matter. I mean, I'm not being a hypocrite. Like it matters in that way. Like, I'm not concerned about Lindor not hitting in spring training, just like I'm not through the moon about Soto. I know Soto's a good hitter. I don't need him to have a good spring training to know that Juan Soto is a freaking god. But when you've got two young players that before McNeil got hurt, it was battling for a roster spot. Now it's who's going to play second base most of the time. I do think we need to put some credence into the results that are happening on the field.
So first of all, two things. The first one is, we talked to Carlos Mendoza too, when we were talking about certain players, pitching wise, who would make the cut as far as the major league roster. I mean, they're not getting cut from the roster, 40 man. And he's, what was the one conversation? Well, options. So it's not about how good you're doing in spring training. It's whether or not you have options. So
yeah, but both of these guys have options. So in Acuna versus Beatty, it's not really
true.
That's not a factor. I mean, the factor is, who do you want on the major league roster? And do you have a preference to someone playing every day at the minor league level as opposed to sitting part of the time at the major league level?
That's fine. But here's the other thing too. I think that the whole plan was Brett Beatty not to sit every day, but Brett Beatty was going to be the bench guy. Like that's what we were coming to. If Jeff McNeil was healthy, that he was going to be that utility guy. He'd play second base, maybe third base, maybe shortstop. Why can't we do that with Acuna playing second base?
Well,
and have Beatty still do that position?
I definitely think it's possible that they're both just going to make the team. I laid it out last time on the Rico that I lean towards them not doing that and Acuna just going to AAA and playing every single day and proving he can hit down there. The problem is, I talk about results mattering. The two other candidates for a super utility role, Luis De Los Santos and Donovan Walton, they haven't hit either. Like, it's not like either of those guys are having a big camp. Now, the Mets could eventually say it doesn't really matter. We just want a guy that's capable of bouncing all over the field, and we're not playing them all the time, and we'd rather Acuna play all the time. So let's send them to the minor leagues. I'll be interested to see how they decide this. But if they put a premium on Acuna playing every single day, then he'll go down to AAA, and we'll obviously see Walton or De Los Santos make the team. The advantage De Los Santos has is that he's a right-hand hitter, and Walton is another left-hand hitter. But we'll see. I mean, that's certainly one of the last roster battles. I think Beatty is now a lock to make this team, though. I think that's done.
I gotta be honest. The fact that we're talking about Donovan Walton, it's reminding me of like Eric Campbell when he was playing, like soups on, as Steve Summers would say. This is a roster that's supposed to be competing for a World Series.
It's the 26th guy on the roster. You think most teams have a superstar as the 26th guy on the roster? Come on.
I mean, if I look at the Dodgers, yes.
Don't include the Dodgers. One thing I didn't realize as much about Donovan Walton. I don't know why we talked about this, but before I did a show with Tiki, we were talking about this topic, like Acuna, Beatty, Donovan Walton. And Tiki went down a rabbit hole with Donovan Walton. And he comes back to me and says, Ev, do you know he pitched like 10 times last year in AAA? I'm like, what? Donovan Walton, and I do not understand or know the role, made 10 bullpen appearances last year in Sacramento and was not bad. So maybe the appeal of Walton is that they will use him as a two-way or as a position player to just get some outs late in a blowout because he has a lot of experience doing it.
He's going to go the Michael Lorenzen route. That's exactly what it was. Hey, you know what? And we'll trade him at the deadline. Maybe somebody else will need him.
Hey, whatever works. Whatever works. So the Juan Soto documentary came out. I don't know how many people care about this. I was surprised. I had no idea that the Mets were producing a documentary about a player that has not yet played a game yet, but it's called The Pursuit. So I heard about it, I'd say like 4 or 5 days ago, talked about it briefly on the WFAN show, and I'm sort of intrigued. I mean, we're all still pretty excited about the fact that they got Juan Soto. It is weird to have a documentary this quickly. Like sometimes you need to wait until, there's just more time that goes by. But I watched it. I did watch the first episode of The Pursuit, and I will give you a review for those that have seen it or for those that are like, yeah, tell me, what'd you think? It wasn't bad. I'm not saying it's bad, and I was entertained, but I did not learn anything. It basically rehashed the 2024 season, which was a very fun year. And we all know the ups, the downs, the turnarounds, but it was just rehashing the season we just completed, the one that's the freshest in our memories. So I can't say it was bad because I was entertained. I mean, who isn't entertained by rewatching Francisco Lindor hit a home run in game 161, right? Or Pete Alonso hitting that home run against the Brewers, or laughing about how bad this team was, and Jorge Lopez throwing his glove and all that great stuff. But I walked away from it saying, boy, that was a lot of fluff. There was just nothing there. Now, there is a second episode of The Pursuit in which I assume they'll go into more detail about, I don't know, The Pursuit. Because episode 1 featured very little about it. Just Juan Soto's a great player. David Stearns and Steve Cohen talked about Juan Soto years ago because they saw he was a free agent emerging. And that was it. that was basically it. Oh, I think David Stearns said, yeah, we started doing our studying in August about what makes him tick, and we put a video together, and it's like, all right, are you going to teach us anything? Like, are we going to learn anything about The Pursuit? So my review on the first episode was entertaining if you want to rehash last season, which I'm still okay doing, but it's March. It's the middle of March. It's the Ides of March. We are less than 2 weeks away from opening day. There's a new season emerging. There is going to come a point where just thinking about 2024 or rewatching highlights of 2024 or interviews from us saying, yeah, they sucked, then they turned it around, OMG, there was a concert, who knew? Well, we're going to say, all right, enough. Let's focus on this season. So I'll watch episode 2. I'm a glutton for it, but I hope to learn something, because that's always my key with documentaries. Am I going to learn anything, or is it just telling me stuff I already knew? All right, last thing I do want to get to, and I did talk about this briefly on WFAN, the New York Mets. This is a good thing and a bad thing, what I'm about to tell you if you're not aware of it. The New York Mets opening day, home opener. The home opener on Friday afternoon, so not less than 2 weeks, less than 3 weeks away, against the Toronto Blue Jays, has the highest average ticket price on the resale market of any team in baseball. And I played that game with Tiki where I said, all right, tell me the home opener that has the highest average ticket price. And he guessed the Dodgers. And I'm like, nope, they're third. And then someone guessed the Yankees. And I'm like, nope, they're 11th. The New York Mets have the highest average ticket price on the resale market for the home opener. And the reason I say it's good news and it's bad news, it's good news in that, wow, the Mets are hot. Wow, people care about the Mets. The bad news is, if you're listening to my voice and you want to go to opening day, do you really want to drop $500 a ticket? That's the juxtaposition one is in. Like, as cool as it is to go to opening day, and I've certainly been to many, and it's a fun experience, no doubt about it. Is it $500 per ticket? Worth it? And I really lean towards no, as much as I love opening day, because opening day is very, very cool when the guys are announced on the field. It is very, very cool when the good luck wreath is handed to the manager of the team, in this case, Carlos Mendoza. It's really cool, especially if it's a beautiful day and the sun is out, when you see that first pitch and it's like, all right, baseball's back. And then after that, it can be an ugly, forgettable game. We've had a lot of those. The opening days in which I don't remember what happened. Opening day 2013, what happened? I can't tell you. I can go back to one of my scorebooks and look at it, but I honestly don't remember. There are a few you do. I remember Tommy Glavine getting bombed in his first Mets opening day. It was about 38 degrees against the Chicago Cubs. I'll never forget that. I won't forget 1998 opening day when it was the opposite. It was 90 degrees outside, March 31st, and Alberto Castillo got the game-winning hit in the bottom of the, I'm going to say 14th inning, but it was a long game, may have been 13th inning, something of that nature. So there are certain opening days that are very memorable, but a lot of them kind of go into the abyss of, yeah, it was a game. I don't remember much. Now, I'm not downplaying opening day. I love opening day. It's a freaking holiday. But those prices are nuts. They're nuts. Now, it's a sign that we are excited. It's a sign that Met fans are pumped up. And I think it is a positive sign that the attendance will be very strong this season, which matters because Steve Cohen is a billionaire who is spending a lot of his own money to build this team. And so we don't want to anger the billionaire. We don't want him to look around, and say, why are there 15,000 people in the ballpark? So I think they'll get off to a good start attendance-wise as they begin the year, the home season against the Toronto Blue Jays.
How are the tickets looking for game 2?
Hot, believe it or not. But I think the reason they're hot is it's a Saturday, so it's sometimes the second game of the year could be like a cold Tuesday night. But in this case, it's a Saturday night, and that's a relatively hot ticket. Then they play Sunday afternoon. That's a relatively hot ticket. The real question on attendance is going to be that Monday night against the Marlins, which I am 1,000% going to. Usually with my wife, I'm like, I may go, I'm locked in. Monday against the Marlins is like my favorite day of the year because that's when baseball's really back because it's a weeknight. It's the Marlins. The baseball season is really in full swing. So you want in on that, Hoff, by the way? Is that one you want to join me in on?
I think that's one that I'm going to have to go to. Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
Let's do it. Monday night, Mets Marlins. Let's go.
Listen, I feel like this year I didn't get tickets for opening day yet, and I feel like I'm just not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. The weekend is probably going to be busy with a lot of my kids' sports and whatnot, so I'm probably not going to get out. But I think that Monday, like you said, it's a true test too to see what the crowd's going to be like. Because if the excitement's still there, whatever the record is, doesn't make a difference if they start 0-6, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. Let's see how the excitement is because Juan Soto is going to be the draw on a regular basis. Am I right?
Yeah, I think fans are ecstatic to see Juan Soto. I think that. When you look back at some of the bigger free agents or trade acquisitions we made, whether it's Beltran, Pedro, Mike Piazza, I think the Soto thing blows everything away. The Piazza one is weird. Piazza had a lot of juice, but it was the middle of the season. It was weird. It came out of absolute nowhere. So there wasn't hype for it because it was like an RKO out of nowhere. The Soto thing comes with hype. It comes with this enthusiasm. And one thing that's very encouraging is that Juan Soto has shown a track record, especially last year with the Yankees, to get off to a good start. And I think that matters because what we're forgetting during this honeymoon period is that if you come to this town with big expectations and you make a lot of money and you struggle early on, we turn on you. We just do. I mean, Mike Piazza was booed. It always pissed me off. He was hitting like 340 when he was getting booed because it was deemed he wasn't getting clutch enough hits, right? Carlos Beltran, I don't even have to re-explain that. We all know what happened. Francisco Lindor obviously dealt with things, including the thumbs down. So Soto coming out of the gate red hot would be fantastic because the one thing I don't want to do, and I'm scared of doing it, is having these long-form discussions about Met fans booing Juan Soto. because we booed a lot of guys. And if he gets off to a crappy start, trust me, he's not immune to it. Like as pumped up as we are. So Soto getting off to a great start would be fantastic because I support booing in that I respect it, but I don't do it. I never boo. I'm not going to lecture anybody about it. I don't like to, but I ain't a booer. So I hope that Juan Soto never puts himself in a spot where he is being booed by us Met fans.
Well, the one thing that always bothered me about the Lindor even being booed was they were booing him, or there was some ruffles that first year, and I'm like, guy's going to be here for 13 years. Can we give it some? Like, if we're going to spend 13 years of Francisco Lindor, it's going to be booing constantly. It's going to be terrible.
No, but the track records of it is that once they show who they are, which happens all the time, unless you're Robbie Alomar, the fans will get off your back. Like Beltran got booed, and he had a bad first year, much like Lindor. They both had lousy-ish first years. They heard the boos, and then both of them eventually had moments or success to where they never heard the boos again. Same with Mike Piazza. So I don't look at it as, oh my God, it's going to be 15 years of booing. No, it's the start. And the Yankees have had it too, whether it's Teixeira or Giambi. Like, it happens, but hopefully it doesn't happen because Soto has shown you a track record of getting off to good starts. He was able to do it last year. Think about how he opened the season last year in Houston. He had home runs, big hits, outfield assists, and he gets to open up his tenure with the Mets in the exact same location.
Because you mentioned Carlos Beltran's name, I got to throw something out there, and I have not done it yet, but I feel like I have to buy the game just for this. Have you seen the new trailer for MLB The Show 25?
I hear that Beltran's in it, yeah.
Yeah, there was like a sneak video. He looks pretty badass, smooth. The same way he threw a ball in a game. It was the same form and everything. I mean, I'm excited now to buy the freaking game.
Are you going to play? Do you play MLB The Show?
No, but my kids do, and my kids make me watch them play. So
okay. Fair enough.
So I will definitely make sure that when I buy, I'm probably gonna buy it tomorrow for Anthony, the little guy, and I'm gonna make sure that the first player he gets added to that team is Carlos Beltran.
Yeah, I may have to add MLB The Show. My kids are very excited about WWE 2K25.
Ooh,
that is the hot video game that just came out. Coming up on the Sunday edition of Rico Brogna, the one that we record Sunday or you consume live on Sunday. We'll go full mailbag. So we will talk to you about whatever's on your mind. So you can email us, thericob@gmail.com. We haven't had one of those in a while, so we'll bring it back. Thericob@gmail.com. We appreciate you downloading and subscribing to Rico Brogna, whether you watch us on the YouTube or you download the podcast wherever you subscribe and download podcasts. We thank you. Goodbye from Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.